Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Can you hear me okay? I see Lee frozen there. Keith, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. All right, wonderful. Well, happy Wednesday, everybody. Glad to see you all again. Good morning, Steffi. Nice to see you. Kelly, welcome. So I wore my Christmas sweater today, just in honor of the holidays. So whatever holiday you guys celebrate, I hope you enjoy it. This happens to be a Rick and Morty sweater. I don't know if anybody's a Rick and Morty fan, but if you are, they make Rick and Morty Christmas sweaters now. So no worries, Kelly. Thank you. Hope you have a speedy recovery. So today we're going to finish up the year with our second kind of conversation around getting your employees or staff to follow your expectations. One of the things that I consistently hear from team leaders is that it's hard for them to get their people to do what they want them to do. And from my point of view, there's a real skill here that's built over time to be able to do that. Now, if you showed up here this morning expecting to learn a magic phrase that all you have to do is say that magic phrase and everyone on your team will say, "Yes, boss, I will do exactly as you say," we all know it's not that simple. The reality is that you proved this last week when I asked you, what would it take for you to follow someone as a leader willingly and kind of enthusiastically? And I asked you to put those things in the chat. And you put down such things as someone who is authentic, someone who is honest with you, someone who is supportive of you or collaborative. Remember saying that? There were a whole bunch of comments that went in there about what it is that you felt you need in order to willingly follow somebody. And what I want to point out today is the importance of those elements, because the reality is we think that, and this is the same thing when we do work on like having difficult conversations with people. I mean, that's a whole separate topic, working through difficult conversations, whether professionally or personally. And most people seem to think that all they have to do is come up with the magic phrasing, the way of saying what it is they need to say in the moment, and they'll get the answer or the result that they want. And unfortunately, it's not that simple. Certainly having the right phraseology in the moment and being able to read the emotional tenor of the conversation in a situation like that is very important and useful. But by far the most important element in someone choosing to follow your lead or not is how they feel about you. And we see this in business after business, in industry after industry. When we have surveys, when surveys are done in almost every industry and they ask people, why did you leave your job? Guess what the number one reason is every single time? My relationship with my boss, which raises, that it brings us to that old phrase, people join companies, but they leave bosses. And so there's nothing more important in your role as a leader than to have relationships that your people want to be a part of. And when it comes to getting people to follow your expectations, the single most important factor is how they feel about you. And so if we want to have people follow our expectations, it's not about necessarily having the magic phrase or presenting the expectation at the right time or in the right way, although those things matter. Ultimately, a person's willingness to follow your expectation over time. I mean, anybody can do it for a little while. They can sprint for a little while, but then they start jogging again after that. But for someone to make consistent effort to follow your expectations over time, whatever they may be, the single most important factor is how they feel about you. So let me share a couple of slides on this, a couple of things you guys can think about. The answer here is not necessarily intuitive, and the response or the way that you get that kind of response that you want from your staff is not in the place that you expect it to be. So let's talk through that a little bit, and then we'll talk a little bit after I share the slides as well. All right. Getting teammates to follow your expectations. Remember, we talked last time about 3 important things to keep in mind. When you want to get buy-in from people on your team, there's 3 things that you cannot forget. If you forget any one of these things, you're going to end up failing somewhere down the line. First and most importantly, you have to remember that the employee will either choose to follow you or choose to not follow you. And if you're a parent, same thing. Difference is you can't always rely on the fact that you are the boss and you have the positional authority to be enough to get people to buy into everything that you want, to get people to follow. They are going to either choose to follow or not, and they will make that choice day after day after day. If you've ever worked with somebody who consistently kind of countermands your wishes, it's a terrible place for you to be, and it's not good for the rest of the team to see it either. Secondly, they have to see that the request is reasonable. It has to be reasonable from their point of view, within their scope of ability, within their resources, and they have to be able to see the value. But what we want to focus on today is the first one, recognizing that the employee must always make the choice. As much as you want them to choose one, they still have a freedom of choice at any time and may choose something else. So here's something to keep in mind. Buy-in is built over time and reflects how your teammate feels about her or his relationship with you. That's what we were just talking about. It's the most important factor of today's call. Secondly, it requires an ongoing, repeated set of actions that demonstrate respect, trust, and value. In other words, most people seem to think that when I have an expectation of somebody, those 5 minutes or 10 minutes that I'm talking are the key elements that matter. I need to master those 5 minutes and present that information in the right way, and he or she will follow it because I've said it in the right way. The reality is it's all this time that's spent in the relationship with the person long before that thing is delivered that actually is the most important aspect of it. That's what we mean by having them have an experience of you that they feel positive about, and therefore they will choose to follow you because of that relationship. And so what we want to be working on today is thinking about what do you need to do during this particular time. Everybody get that? This is the big mind shift in this, is to understand it's not about what's happening here. That's just downstream from everything that happened up here. People leave bosses after they join companies because whatever's happened here is something that they're not comfortable with. So we said last time, it's important to recognize who you are. And what I was alluding to last time was this segment, right? They're having an experience of who you are all of this time, and that's influencing whether they want to continue to work with you, or whether they want to continue to willingly work with you. And I said before, you need to be clear about how it is you need to be with your people for them to choose to stay with you and work at their highest level of productivity. Now, I'm not implying that these 5 things are the 5 things that you need to choose. These are just examples of good things that could be part of your character, things that are values to you that matter. But you need to identify 3, 4, 5 things like this on your own personal list and say, this is how I need to be with my people. Maybe it's collaborative. Maybe it's supportive. Maybe it's challenging. Maybe it's inspiring. Maybe it's authentic. Maybe it's open-minded and flexible. You need to be clear about how it is you think you need to be. Not just to get them to say what you want or get them to do what you want, but it's more about how you feel you need to show up as a leader. That's who you are. We talked about that last time. Today, we want to focus on, okay, so if you're clear on what that is, then what is it that you need to do? What's the experience that that person needs to have of you during this long period that's going to inspire and motivate that person to say yes when we get to this request? Here are 4 things. No matter what you choose on the left here for who you are, there's 4 things that you need to consistently be doing over time, either daily, weekly, or maybe monthly. And if you're not doing all 4 of these things, I guarantee you're hurting your chances for the person to say yes. This is what we want to focus on. And this comes out of surveys that we've done and surveys that others have done, feedback from coaches and team leaders that we've talked with about what it is that people are looking for from you. Here are the 4 items. It seems pretty simple on a piece of paper, and it actually isn't that difficult to do. But as leaders, unfortunately, we allow so many other things getting in the way of the things like this that are really important. Asking questions, showing appreciation, soliciting and accepting feedback, and contributing on a daily basis. So let's go over each of these 4 for just a moment, and then we'll talk about it. Asking questions. Ask yourself right now, how much time of my talk time with my staff is in asking questions versus talking? If you happen to be a leader that spends 80% of your communication time with your team talking rather than listening or asking, you got to switch that. You got to reverse it. You got to get closer to 50-50. You need to move in that direction. And it's hard to do because we see ourselves as the leaders. We see ourselves as the one who needs to call the shots and lay down the law and tell everybody what we should do, or we need to make all the decisions. But there's very different ways to make those decisions along the way. You can just say my way or the highway, or you can first start by saying, okay, what do you think? 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 And then still reserve the power to make the decision yourself. But whether you choose A or B in that particular instance has a completely different impact on the people on your team. Make sense? So ask yourself right now and give some thought to how much time you spend asking questions of people and listening versus just dictating and talking. So what are some questions you ask? Very simple questions. Hey, Sue, how do you think we ought to solve this problem? Especially if Sue's been around a few years, she has some knowledge, she has some experience, and maybe she has some pride. And if you never ask her what she thinks, then after a while, she'll stop telling you. Heather, what's going on with your son? You told me he was sick last week. How's he doing? Do you ever ask your teammates what's going on in their life outside of business, or is it all about business for you? Because it may not be all about business for them, right? These are just two examples. I'm not saying these are the questions you need to ask, but they're simple questions you can ask. And what it reflects is your willingness to allow them space to contribute to the relationship, right? If you imagine a relationship that's totally dominated by one person and totally like non-involved by the other person, can we really even call that a relationship? Right? There's something about a definition of relationship that means both people have a place in it. And so if you're doing the dictating all the time, it may be that you're kind of like filling up all the space of the relationship and not allowing the other person any space in it. So asking a simple question, what are you working on? How's it going? What kind of help do you need? What could be better? How could we do it better? If you're not asking questions like this on a regular basis, you're hurting yourself not only in that particular moment, learning something that you might not know, but you're also preventing yourself from gaining their buy-in further down the road when you have an expectation of others. And for personal stuff, absolutely same thing. Second, show an appreciation. This is one of the most consistent complaints that we get about leaders. People have asked me, what is it people say most that they don't like about leaders? Probably in the top two is they never say thank you. They just don't give me the props that I think I deserve. Now, it's a separate argument or discussion whether they deserve it or not. But in their mind, they're looking for something as simple as, thanks, good job. How can you do that? A couple of easy ways. Hey, Ken, I think you handled that conversation with a client very well. I'm so glad you're on my team. Or Janice, I don't know what I would do without you. Now, I'm not saying you make something up here. I'm not saying you do something that's disingenuous. It has to be real and true and authentic. If it isn't, they'll smoke it out right away. They'll know you're just like blowing smoke, right? But if it is honest and true for you, and all you do is share it, that goes a long way to somebody a week later or a day later saying, you're asking this of me? Sure, I can do that. Because they know how much you value their being on your team. So you should have some kind of a process for yourself as leaders to make sure that what you do appreciate about people is getting communicated. Maybe it's just a quick offhand comment once in a while when you see them doing something good. When my kids were in elementary school, they were in this after-school program, and they would get a little token as a kind of a special prize when they were caught doing something good. And, usually it's you're caught doing something bad, but in that particular program, they had caught doing something good. And the kids were recognized for it. And they could, get these tokens and they get some kind of a prize or something like that. But it's similar here. You need to catch somebody doing something right or doing something well. And it could be other ways. You could send an email once in a while. You could just say, hey, listen, I was thinking about, how you handled this client and that client 2 months ago and that client 6 months ago, and just wanted to let you know, how much I appreciate all your hard work on behalf of the team. I think you're terrific. Or whatever it is that's true for you, make sure it's getting out of your head and into theirs. 3, soliciting and accepting feedback. It's important for you as a leader to ask from time to time, tell me about how you're experiencing me. Tell me what it is that I do that makes your life easy. Tell me what it is that I do that makes your life difficult, right? Some kinds of questions like that, just so you can know what the world looks like from their point of view. It could be a simple question like this. Hey, Rob, what do you think would have been better in that situation? Or what could we have done differently? And if somebody gives you some feedback that you asked for, first thing you have to say is thank you, right? You don't have to say anything else. If they give you feedback that you don't like or you don't think is true or whatever, you don't have to say anything in response. Just say thank you. But if they do give you something that has some value or relevance to you, you can say, hey, thanks for giving me your thoughts. I'm thinking I might approach it differently this time. Doesn't mean you have to, but if that's true for you, you're considering which way to go, then go ahead and say it, because they know that their feedback was heard and valued. If you're considering doing it differently next time, it's saying to them, I value what you told me enough to reconsider how I handle it. Again, it can't be disingenuous. It's got to be true. So if you can't say something like this last sentence, I'm thinking of approaching it differently, don't say it. Just say, thanks for giving me your thoughts. I'll consider it. And finally, contribute value daily. Find some way to make your interactions value to others. Make it about what they need at that particular moment, what they want at that particular moment, something that is important to them, and you're there to support or address or serve, something like that. Could be something like, hey, how can I help, Cindy? I know you got this difficult client. What's going on? Is there something I can do for you? Or you've been working so hard. Why don't you take tomorrow off? I'll cover the phones. What admin or TC wouldn't love to hear that from a boss? If you were a TC or you were working your butt off for somebody and, it's a grind right now, the boss says, you know what? Thanks. You're doing a great job. I appreciate it. Take tomorrow off. I'll manage stuff. I'll see you Friday. Who wouldn't want to have an opportunity like that? And yet, how many get that chance? Or would it help if I delivered that X for you, right? Everybody's busy. Everybody's running around. Nobody has enough time to do the things that they want to do. And what a help it is when somebody swoops in and says, you know what, I'll take care of that one task for you. I'll take that off your plate. Now that assumes that you have some, capacity to do it yourselves. And I'm not saying to put all of your work aside to do something for your staff. But think about how much somebody will remember what you did for them next time you ask for an expectation, when you did something like that, when you helped them when they needed it. You know the old saying from Maya Angelou, who said, people never remember what you said or what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And you will make them feel thankful, valued, honored, respected by saying, I'm willing to put my stuff aside to help you for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. Which brings us to this kind of like philosophy from Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar was if you don't know Zig Ziglar, he died a couple of years ago, spoke at thousands of corporate events on sales and stuff. And he had a philosophy of life, which was like this. You can have everything you want in life if you will just help enough other people get what they want. And so this is a good philosophy for you to consider as the leader of your particular team. You can get everything you want out of your business if you simply help everybody on your team get what they want. It's not a huge ask. You don't have 50 employees. You don't have 100 employees. You don't have 1,000 employees. But if you can understand what it is they want in the macro and work towards that and support them to getting there, whether it's career growth or learning or mentoring or whatever it is, and in the moment when they're really overstressed and maybe they could use the help for you to deliver something for them, take one thing off of their plate. They never forget that. They never forget how they feel, and they'll always be thankful to you for that. I know that many of you are already liked and loved by your teammates. There's more that you can probably do here if you adopt some kind of a philosophy like this. Let me pull this down. The way that I look at this, and I'd like to suggest that you guys think about it this way too, is you have two groups of clients, external clients and internal clients. Your external clients are the people who are buying and selling houses. Your internal clients are every one of your staff. And what we find over and over, unfortunately, is that leaders will do almost anything to serve the needs of their external clients. And they do virtually nothing to serve the needs of their internal clients. Somehow there's a mind block in there that these internal clients, called my staff, they don't deserve my time and attention in the way that an external client who is revenue generating does. But if you switch that around a little bit and you say, you know what, if I can focus on my clients, then that kind of like that derivative of that service goes to the benefit of the clients, then everybody wins. And that's kind of what Zig Ziglar's talking about. If you can help them get what they need, you're going to get what you need. Anybody ever heard of Danny Meyer? Danny Meyer's a well-known restaurateur. He's the guy who's behind Shake Shack and the Union Square Cafe in New York City and some other well-known restaurants. Very successful guy. And he wrote a book called Setting the Table. You might find it interesting sometime. Steffi, do you know that book? I see your head nodding. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's called Setting the Table. And he has an interesting philosophy on how he ranks the people that are part of his business. He identifies 5 different stakeholders in his business: customers, employees, vendors who supply stuff, the general community at large, and I forget what I'm missing. And the point here is that most people, if we ask him, what's the most important stakeholder, most people would answer, well, my customers, they're number one. But he's got a very different way of looking at it. It's pretty interesting. It's been part of his success. He says, my number one stakeholder, the number 5 is investors in his business. And so he's got a different way of looking at it. He says, my number one stakeholder is my staff. Because if I can serve my staff so that they can do their work excellently, then the customers experience a wonderful experience. If the customers are having a wonderful experience, then they come back for more, which means the vendors get more of my service. They get more of my sales, right? Because I need more food. I've got more customers. It's very successful. If the vendors are served and the clients are served, then I'm running a business that's not only supporting the people who work here, it's not only providing a service to the people who come here, it's providing a source of revenue to the other businesses in the area that, depend on my business. Therefore, I'm serving the community. And so if I'm serving my staff and I'm serving the clients and I'm serving vendors and therefore the larger community at large, guess what? Chances are my investors are making money on their investment. And so that's how he ranks them. And so I'd like to suggest that you guys consider at least thinking about your people that way as well. The number one constituency for the success of your business is your staff. And when you think about it that way, and you're serving them with that kind of a mindset and those kinds of activities, showing appreciation, asking questions, asking for feedback, all of that stuff, if you're doing that on a regular basis, weekly basis, daily basis, absolutely they will follow you to the ends of the earth. So let me ask you, for how many of you is this a little bit of a different way of thinking about it? Please just put into the chat. If it's a little bit of a different way of approaching this for you, just put a yes in there so I can understand. Steffi, in what way is this a little bit different for you? Thank you, Steffi. Thank you, Lee.
No, I mean, I like the idea of shifting. It's kind of like being a parent. And like you know that you're coming home and everyone is, you're on the same page, and you assume that you're good with them, but then you go out and work with, your work or other things, and then you are extra special to take care because there's not that familiarity. And I think sometimes you just take the people closer for you for granted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
So the people on your team, you or in your family or whatever, your parents or whatever, you just need to take a little extra time to remember that they're all boats lift all tides, or whatever that is. But yeah, it's stuff that, to be honest, was doing already, but it just reinforces the idea to keep reminding yourself to do that. So
got it. Thank you. What I find most commonly is that people understand these concepts, but they're not actually doing them on a daily basis. If I went to everybody on your team today and I said, do you believe you get the appropriate recognition that you deserve from your boss? I sure hope every one of them would say yes, but I'm almost certain they wouldn't. Because having done that with many teams, that's what I get. And so, there's a gap here where we always think that they would, as Keith says, and they might. He may be right, and anybody else who thinks that may be right. But my experience interviewing many teams is it's not right. And so if someone is going to say to me, I don't get the recognition I deserve, well, what does that mean about how they feel perhaps about the experience working there? To answer Lizzie's question from before, what I said prior to saying they'll follow you to the ends of the earth is, if you have a mindset of putting your people first to succeed in the business through the people that you've hired to work with you, and you're going through these particular actions that were listed on the slide there on a daily or regular basis, then absolutely people will be having an experience that's so positive for them that they would never want to go anywhere else. And more importantly, for our discussions here, they will follow your expectation when you ask it and it's reasonable. Lee, how about you? You said this is a little bit different for you. Please tell me what's coming up for you when you think about this.
I mean, kind of like Steffi said, I like to be a little hands off, and let people kind of work, but you need to go back around and I guess, like you're saying, compliment them when they've done something well, or they've closed a good deal, just staying in touch with them, even with just Darlene and I as partners. I think we need to do that more often. We expect each other to do our own things, but never really turn around to kind of respect what they've been able to do with the business or with their part of what they're doing for a deal. So I think it just reiterates, what we should be focusing on rather than the customer's always right kind of thing.
Yep, understood. The customer's always right is actually not a good way to consider business, right? And it's not good for the success of the business to just do anything and everything that a client wants, no matter what.
Well, especially in real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've worked with other businesses too. I mean, I did some work with the car company. I won't say which one. The car supplier that makes 1/3 of every car navigation system for every car on the planet, and they've got the same problem. Because when a client wants a new car and they want this thing to have 858 different functions, which people will never use, people use 5 functions, maybe 10, but they want 450. And if the supplier is going to say, yeah, I'll give you all 450, they're going to be in profitability hell, because there's so much code that needs to be written for that stuff. And it's so complex that, they're screwing themselves. Same thing for any business. What was I going to say that you said, Lee? So for you, Lee, if you haven't asked your team lately, ask them one by one, try to get a better bead on how hands-on they want you to be. You said, I tend to be hands-off. Well, great. I'm glad that works for you, but does it work for them? It's a great opportunity for you to go up to each person separately and say, hey, would you like me to be more hands-on? And if so, why? Or, is the way that I'm supporting you working for you? And if not, what could I do differently? And you might find some will say, hey, I love the fact that, you never bother me until I have a problem and then you help me. Great. But others might say, you know what? I kind of wish you'd step in a little bit more because I could use your help a little more often. Right. And so it's a good chance for you to get some feedback. If you haven't done that in a while, just go to each person on the team one by one and have that conversation. And you could ask other things too, in what areas would you like some more support from me that you're not currently getting? Or, we talk about once or twice a week, and is that ideal for you, or would it be more valuable for you if we talk more often or less often? And just see what they have to say. You don't have to agree to it at that moment. You don't have to say yes to anything at that moment, but you're getting a chance to talk about it and understand what the world looks like from their point of view.
That makes total sense.
Let me check this one from Joanne. Almost out of time. How do you manage staff vendors that are not grateful, wrong word, for what you give them, referrals? What probing questions can you ask to identify if they value? Okay, great. So it's a great question, Joanne. So remember, if you're going to follow Danny Meyer's kind of hierarchy of value, or hierarchy of your constituencies or stakeholders, employees first, then vendors. Now, I don't know if Compass comes after that, probably, but certainly employees and vendors should be pretty much right at the top, right next to clients somewhere in there. Vendors are an important player in your role. You've made a strategic decision to maybe work with this vendor and that vendor and another vendor, whether it's title company or marketing or whatever it is. They affect the success of your business. If they are not willing to meet you halfway and serve your business, if they're only in business for themselves, they may not be the right one for you. And we've seen some of those. Chirag has said on many of the calls in the past that if you're not getting referrals from your vendors, you got the wrong vendor. And you know what? I agree with that. You should be in a conversation with them about what it is you need to make your business succeed. And it might be partly their service, It might be it's title company or lawyer, whoever it is, but there's no reason why they can't actually provide something else, like maybe a referral once in a while. And some of them never thought about it, or some of them have thought about it, but have never bothered. And so if you never talk with them about anything like that, then there's no possibility that you get that potential extra benefit out of it. If you want to ask some questions to them, you could say something, you'd have to like develop a relationship, but you'd probably be best to go out and have some coffee with them. I'd suggest doing this face-to-face if possible, rather than online or something, just because you get a better conversation going. But you could ask questions like, why'd you start this business? And gosh, you've been doing it 20 years now. How much longer do you think you want to keep doing this? Right? You're trying to understand what the world looks like from their point of view in a general sense. And then you could ask other questions. As you get answers back, you start to see what is it that they're really after here. Are they after money? Are they after like the fun of doing a business? Do they just value relationships and they love people? Right? You can say, well, in my business, money's not as important to me as like being part of a really, rock solid team where everybody loves to be, part of it. How do you see your business? How do the people in your business see it? Right? You're just asking questions like that. It doesn't have to be like deeply probing questions, but it's questions that are coming out of your curiosity and willingness to understand their business better. And by the way, before you have the conversation, you'd want to set up the conversation ahead of time, right? Frame it by saying something like, hey, you know what? I'd like to explore other ways that we might be able to provide value to each other beyond what we've done up to now. Would you be willing to have a conversation with me about that? And if they say yes, great. If they say no, then that's a flag for you, right? You should consider whether that's like the ideal partnership for you or not. Okay, I'm sorry we're a little bit over time here today, so we're going to have to stop there. I'm happy to continue this conversation. This is, by the way, the last call for this year. So the next 2 weeks will be off. So I'm looking forward to kicking off again with everybody in the new year. We've got a lot of new topics that we're going to cover that we haven't had a chance to cover yet around hiring people, recruiting people, onboarding people, some more performance management stuff, some more stuff about building rock solid relationships with employees and clients. I took all the information that you gave me a couple of sessions ago about, what you'd like to see in future sessions, and we're going to work through that and work all that into the calendar as well. But we're always open to feedback. Here I am asking you guys for feedback. So please, if you have 2 minutes sometime, send me an email, david@chiragshahcoaching.com. Let me know what you like about what I do, what you don't like about what I do, what you'd like to see me do more of or less of in the future, any ideas for topics that you'd like us to cover in the future. We're here to serve you in every way we can. So please give us your feedback, and I look forward to seeing everybody in the new year. Enjoy the holidays.